everyone, it's Shannon here, and welcome to a Cherry on Top's February YouTube video hop. As you can see, this month's theme is this gorgeous color palette. Now, I actually don't own inks that totally match those colors, so today I'm going to share with you how I like to create my own shades by layering my inks. This is a really handy trick to do if you need a particular color or if you have a smaller ink collection. We're actually going to start out with foiling. I have the detailed leaf foil plate here and my Glimmer foil machine. I've got it turned on, but it's not heated up all the way, and I've learned, since it's colder right now, to start heating it up with my foil plate on. So now that it's hot and ready, I'm going to hit the timer. That's the second green light. Once that stops blinking, now we're ready to create our sandwich. I'm going to be using this gorgeous polished brass Glimmer foil, and now I'm going to detach my platform, add the foil shiny side down or gold side down. Then I'll grab my paper, my cardstock, which is 110-pound white cardstock. Then I will grab the shim and then the top plate. Now that I've finished creating my sandwich, I'm going to take it over to my Spellbinders Platinum, run it through my die cutting machine, and now that I've ran it through, I can deconstruct my sandwich and pull off my panel of cardstocks to reveal this beautiful gold foiled leaf. With that done, we're ready to ink blend. I do have this leftover negative piece of foil, and if you happen to have one of the solid plates, foiling plates, I definitely encourage you to foil that because that'd be a beautiful gold leaf. Now I have the detailed leaf stencils. There are 4 stencils in this set. I'm going to start with stencil 1 here. I'm going to do them in order. I'm going to line it up with the leaf, and then I'm going to grab a couple pieces of a low tack tape just to kind of hold that stencil in place. Now I'm going to grab my swatch book of my inks. These are all the Pinkfresh Studio inks, and just to remind you, here's our color palette. They're a little bit too bright, pointing out this pink here. That's what I'm going to use, bubblegum, but you can see it's a little too bright, so I'm going to dull it down with some browns. This is Warm Buff and Dough. And as well as that green that I'm going to use, the Meadow, it's a little bit too bright too, so I'm going to dull it down with the warmer browns. And this just simple layering these inks are going to totally change the color and create a new shade. I'm going to start here with this first stencil and just ink blend all the openings with this light brown, which again is Warm Buff, and just quickly ink blend, basically a flat blend, not trying to do any gradations. Now we're going to move on to our second ink, which is Bubblegum, that pink, and I'm going to ink blend kind of lightly with this pink because we're going to use it again later for our darker shade of pink, so I don't want to go too heavy-handedly with that bubblegum. And that's our first shade, which is that light pink from the palette. Now I'm on to stencil number 2, just going to simply line it up just like how I did with the first stencil. After I get it in place, I'll then grab a couple pieces of tape to hold it down, and now we're going to move on to our dark pink combo, and I'm starting with a darker brown this time. This is Dough. It's just a little bit darker than that Warm Buff, and go over all the openings with this darker brown. Once I finish with that, we're going to go back to that bubblegum, the same pink we used in the first stencil, and be much more heavy-handed with this pink. And now that's going to create that much deeper, more kind of a mauve-y pink, and I really love how that came out. Now on to stencil 3. Stencil 3 is our lighter green, or at least I'm choosing to do this layer in lighter green. I'm going to get the stencil in place, put the tape down. Now there's one little opening that has no it's basically just the white of the paper, so I'm going to quickly ink blend that with the Warm Buff, and then all the other openings in the stencil are already ink blended with a combo of the brown and the pink. So when we layer this meadow green on top, it's going to be affected by those other colors, and because they're all warm tones, it's going to warm up this green a bit and make it have a little bit more of that earth tone kind of green. Now that we've finished with that green, we're on our last stencil, stencil 4. Just going to line it up, use a couple pieces of tape to hold it down. Now this layer is very simple. This evergreen basically matches the dark green in the palette, so I'm going to just quickly ink blend all the openings with this beautiful dark green. And once we finish with that, we'll actually be done with our beautiful leaves. I'll pull off the stencil here so you can see. I love the way this stencil works with the foil plate. I love the little kind of variations in the leaf. It's just so pretty. I'm now using the matching die, so the detailed leaf die, just centering it over the image, using a couple pieces of tape to hold it in place. You want to be really careful when you're using tape with foil, because the tape can remove the foil. So I put it strategically just on the sides of the die and the paper, so it didn't actually come in contact with any of the foiled areas. Ran it through my die cutting machine. Now I'll remove my tape and remove the die, and we'll have this perfectly beautiful colored leaf that will match our palette wonderfully. Now moving on to the stamp set. I'm going to use a stamp set for our sentiment. This again is the detailed leaf stamp set, which is really nice. If you don't have a foil machine, you can basically recreate this card just with gold heat embossing, which is actually what I'm going to do for the sentiment. I pulled it off, mounted it in my MISTI, going to ink it up with some VersaMark embossing watermark ink. I did apply some anti-static powder first, just to make sure my embossing powder, which is gold, doesn't stick to any of the other areas. We do have a little bit of static cling, so I've grabbed my brush here to kind of clean off that gold embossing powder, those stray little bits of powder, and then I'll heat set with my heat tool. Now that we've heat set our sentiment, I'm going to grab the matching die, again part of that detailed leaf die set. Just line it up and then run it through my die cutting machine, and we'll be left with our perfectly die cut sentiment that's going to just complete this really clean and simple card. So now that the sentiment's done, we're basically ready to put this together. I do have a panel of gray cardstock. It's 3 3/4 by 5 inches, so a little bit smaller than an A2 top folding card base front, and that's just going to create a nice border of white and kind of scale down our canvas so that the leaf doesn't seem like it's swimming in this white open space. And for the leaf, I've already added a bunch of foam adhesive on the backside, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the backing on that, and then I'm going to grab my liquid adhesive and add a little bit of liquid glue to the backside of all the foam squares, and that's going to allow me to have a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit of wiggle time to get this leaf perfectly centered, because if I were to not use the glue and just stick it down, I'd have only one chance to get that leaf in the right spot. Now that the leaf's in place, I'm ready for the sentiment. The tail end of it kind of hangs off, but the rest of it's going to be over the leaf. I do want to pop it up, so I'm going to put some foam adhesive, one layer on the back side of the sentiment. And then on that tail end of the word beautiful, I'm going to double up. So I'm going to cut this little strip here because it was a little too long, and use that tiny little square that's over there on the right. I'm going to pick it up right here and stick it down on that tail end of the sentiment. So it's doubled up foam adhesive just on the end, so it's well supported. So I've added some more liquid glue in the back side of the sentiment on the foam areas for the foam adhesive, so I have a little bit of wiggle room to get that sentiment nice and straight and in the right place. And here is the finished card. I'll hold it to the camera so you can get a good look. It's definitely a clean and simple card, but I think the leaf is so beautiful, or the leaves are so beautiful, that it really is the star of the show, and it's all you need because it's just such a gorgeous focal point. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video and found this technique helpful, and enjoy yourself as you work your way through the rest of the video hop. Bye everyone.